All right, welcome and thank you everyone for joining us for another Twitter space. Today is November 2nd, 2022, and this is the ledgerscale Internet of Value focused topic space, episode 16. Um, and I just wanted to let everybody know that ledgerscale Foundation was founded with two goals in mind. One, we want to provide educational services to not only our community, but to the entire digital asset community, and to help scale up the number of brains that understand how distributed ledger technology works. And two, we intend to one day run hardware to provide infrastructural support not only on the XRP ledger, but to all of the distributed ledger technology networks that we believe are ESG friendly and running a form of decentralized consensus. We host these spaces Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, starting at 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. And on Wednesday, we host our focus topic space from 5 to 6 Eastern Standard Time. If I could just ask if everyone could give us a follow on Twitter at ledgerscale, turn those notifications on so you know we're going live, and as well as at the bottom right, if everyone could, well, I have a plus sign there today for some reason, but if everyone could hit the bubble or the plus sign and like and retweet the space so that hopefully other people can find this information valuable in the future.
Yep, and so given this is a focus space, maybe it's a little less open, but for folks that want to speak up, please speak up. Just be cordial, and yeah, we'd like to. The idea here is to just engage the community and discuss some of these concepts and ideas. So yeah, just welcome to the space. Please be cordial. And I'm actually pretty excited about today's topic. This is something that's this gets my finance side going. So I don't know if I should. I don't know if I should just start talking or.
Yeah, you jump off on. I just want to say sorry at first for me starting a little late. I confused myself, so I opened the Twitter on the Ledger Scale account, and I had my icon was in the space already, and I didn't realize I joined in on the computer, and I was freaking out because I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Twitter's not even open on my other phone, so I was trying to figure out what was going on, but it was my fault for that. So but yeah, you go ahead, you start now, and I will join in a minute.
Well, okay. I'll start off because this is one of these things where it's like if you understand what you're looking at, then um, it can change your perspective. So okay, so routing effectively. Okay, forget that we're talking about money, right? Let's just talk about routing. So if you're routing like packets of data, this is what AT&T and Comcast and all the big ISPs. This is their value creation function. And with the big money center banks, they do the same thing, except they're routing value instead of data packets, right? So, oh geez, where do I go with this? So you have two different levels of routing functionality. You've got on ledger, right? That's pathfinding. And it's computationally expensive. This is why, if you're running like a cluster, you're apparently people are starting to have a separate server to perform the routing or the pathfinding function. And I've made this. I don't want to get on the SEC lawsuit BS, but I've made this argument before that the fact that the XRP ledger had the pathfinding function, because one of the legal arguments that the SEC says is, well, the ledger wasn't functional. Well, actually, I'm sorry, but if you can make a multi-billion-dollar company essentially routing data packets, and if you spin up a ledger that has this pathfinding capacity, and you can route money through the ledger, that's functionality. So, like, it was functional from day one. And then the other aspect here is this is like how you make money. Like people who are providing okay, so when I say routing, I'm talking about essentially what the functionality that a liquidity provider uh, provides, right? Like they provide liquidity across multiple ledgers, or at least across two. I mean, I think ultimately the people who run these operations are going to provide liquidity across many multiple ledgers. But that makes things more complicated. And I don't want to just talk, but it's so you get it. So you have pathfinding on the XRP ledger, and this would be the same for the XLM ledger. And then you have interledger protocol. So interledger protocol has no ledger. And I'm halfway chose this topic to discuss because we've got the interledger protocol conference coming up here in basically a week. And so you have on the since okay, because XRP ledger and XLM ledger have a ledger, the pathfinding, hence routing, hence market making type of functionality can be performed on ledger. With interledger protocol, there is no ledger. So you have to introduce a new actor called a connector. And a connector is an actor that has an account on it. This is much like the bridges. You've heard about some of these bridge hacks, um, or a agent or a connector there's all sorts of different names. It's all the same function. So the interledger protocol connectors, they have accounts on multiple ledgers. In each account, they are going to have some value, right? And then they provide the capacity for an end user to move value from, say, ledger A to B. And they get paid for that, right? This is essentially what Wall Street does. Well, maybe Wall Street does a few other things, but the big money center banks are liquidity providers, and or connectors, whatever you want to call them. They connect different countries, ledgers, currencies, whatever you want to call it. And then you have the whole problem of pricing this liquidity, which is kind of what I wanted to talk about, well, I mean, I want to talk about the mechanics about how the liquidity is connected. I think that's important. Maybe the pricing liquidity is a little too much for a 1 hour chat. Um, am I good, or am I losing people?
Yeah, I think you've talking about the subject well, just a little all over jumping from thing to thing, but it's still subject matter, still good. Just yeah. Maybe talk more about the connectors themselves and what each different connector in a different industry could be providing from that source, the sources of liquidity, and why a business could utilize this type of technology to make their business more efficient.
Uh, well, if you're in the business of providing liquidity, so you're essentially a market maker, um, then you okay, your customers, this is like on demand liquidity in a sense. Your customers, I mean, this is like in essence, it's kind of almost the same thing as the correspondent banking model. Because you're providing the liquidity, right? So you're basically fronting the money, and that helps connect all these other people who are your end users between different currencies. Now, where the fun stuff comes in is with the routing. So this is when I say routing, think uh, how do I determine the FX rate? This is where the fun really comes in, because you and okay, so traditionally most businesses, unless you're like a big money center bank like a JP Morgan or Citi or something, or Goldman or what have you, Barclays, um, unless you're one of those folks, generally you're going to be providing liquidity between a single pair of assets. So token A, token B, currency A, currency B, whatever. Uh, so you have a very simple, like, imagine you're running the company. Okay, you have a very simple. You're like a specialist, like from the old days when you used to have specialists on like the New York Stock Exchange, like on the floor, and they would say run an order book, and it's just one order book, one single pair, right? And they would be like doing, I don't know, a pair between GM and dollars, what have you. Versus, okay, now with these interledger protocol connectors and the way some of this stuff is going to be built out, these routing tables are going to get blown out, because it makes it exponentially more complicated to calculate the best rate. And the pathfinding function does this on the XRP ledger, and I'm sure they didn't get rid of that on the XLM ledger. That would be retarded. But it automatically calculates at least up to 7 hops. The cheapest route, or the highest quality, so the most money that can flow through the route. And yeah, it just does that automatically. So the argument that I made was, when you're paying your transaction fee, you're paying for this like calculation to be performed to route your value through the network to from the recipient from the sender to the recipient, and that's a lot of work. The pathfinding function, granted, it is on Ledger. The connectors there's actually formulas you can use that will do better than pathfinding. Believe it or not, they come from the telecom industry, because the telecom industry is about routing, like phone calls and stuff. So they have lots of experience in routing. But the pathfinding function does that internally to the ledger. The connectors are outside the ledger, obviously, and so like ILP connectors, and so they have to figure out how to do their own pathfinding. And there can be advantages there, arbitrage advantages. If you have a better a formula, if you have a essentially a routing formula that can outperform the pathfinding formula, you can make profit. That's arbitrage. So there's that part of it. I'll stop for a second and see if anyone has a question or.
Yeah, this is a good moment. If anybody in the audience has any questions about the topics that have been talked about so far, or any particular thing that Karma has said, please feel free to hit the request and come up. And I'd love to hear, because if you were thinking a question, I guarantee somebody else in the audience, or somebody even down the line that listens to the chat, will have that same thought or question. So please, no bad questions. And I can't see if there's like a bubble, a window under the chat to be able to see if anybody can type questions. So unfortunately for today, I guess just got to hit the request and come up and speak if you do. I don't know why there's no bubble today, but Twitter's, I guess, just changing things.
Yeah, it is strange that thing's not down there, but whatever.
Yes, hi guys. I've got a question about automated market makers. Is there any sense to have it market makers on private sidechain?
Yeah, automated market makers are a totally different ball game, because they're they operate on a public ledger. Like interledger protocol connectors, this is a private ledger. This is like I control the routing table. Like I set the rates. Okay, it's my money. I'm providing the liquidity. So versus automated, like AMMs, automated market makers, that's more of a crowdsourced pricing of liquidity that the crowd provides, or sort of probably as a weighted average, creates the pricing for the FX. And the difference between the two is actually one of the things I'm most excited about, because in current day, the centralized, the big banks, like they determine the FX rates. So you have AMMs, you can have a crowdsourced pricing mechanism for the liquidity, and I think that's a good thing. It's like a good sort of yin yang kind of balancing type of market dynamic.
Thank you. If you could compare the David's AMM proposition on XRPL to other competitive blockchain automated market makers, let's say on Ethereum, Is there anything similar to what David is proposing, or?
No, I would say the biggest reason is because there is no other layer one protocol DEX that exists today, of my knowledge, in the blockchain space. But that being said, very interestingly enough, I saw a lot of comments recently, even from the BIS, who were they're now proposing, and this goes right into what we were just talking about. Uh,
Yeah, that's why I'm asking, because in the recent tweets I've been actually suggesting that then they might actually use private side chains and automated market makers, because they are actually saying that in the tweet. So
exactly.
it,
And so they're talking about now. Here's the thing. Here's the biggest thing, right? How do they source this liquidity from these automated market makers and have these side chains all interconnected with each other? Well, they could use like what Ripple has created, which is their federator, right? Which is really just another connector, which goes right into our routing liquidity and conversation, right? It's Or they could use, maybe they're using code base off of the interledger protocol to connect to connect all the side chains. There's a vast amount of ways to have these connectors done and the routing of the liquidity. But yeah, it's been very interesting the last couple weeks seeing all of these different central banks talking about now routing liquidity from automated market makers, in a DeFi setting that is attached to all of the banks.
Yeah, and I think it's a big deal. I hadn't thought about discussing the AMMs in today's chat, but I think that's significantly important. Um, so let's go there. But also, I think the universal versus atomic mode and of interledger protocol and some of the cryptography there is important. That doesn't exactly have to do with the routing of liquidity. Well, it kind of does actually, but there's that aspect as well, because how you route the liquidity matters.
And I think it's more about like on an off chain perspective, like on a multi chain perspective. How are you routing all of the liquidity together? And you need all of these various connectors, um, right, and liquidity providers to be able to even have that ability to do so. And so it really does. It's funny actually because I didn't intend to bring up the AMM either, but it really rolls right into what we're talking about today so far. And Alex, you got your hand up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, just I've been listening in. I was just thinking maybe it's a good opportunity to be able to sort of explain, Karma, like how these like the routing systems have actually been run by your incumbent banks and whatnot at this stage, and how this new technology is actually going to change the way that they're doing business as well. Because I mean, a lot of people understand that banks move from one country to another country through Nostro-Vostro accounts and all this kind of stuff, but there's a little bit more to it. And I was just wondering if you could give that basis and then sort of explain a bit more on how that's actually going to change into the new technology sort of sector.
Oh yeah,
Well,
good one.
that sorry.
No. No. I'd like for you to talk about it, but it's a good one. And I think Karma, if you wanted to start about why the system today is bulky and what makes it bulky and inefficient, and then why this would be such a change.
Um, well, better, faster, cheaper. But no, okay, to do like a compare and contrast between Nostra Vostra correspondent banking methods, and this is another one of these. The more things change, the more they stay the same. So, with Interledger Protocol, you have two options in terms of methodology: universal and atomic. So, the with Well, oh, I hope I'm not wrong. I think I might be wrong here.
No, it's are you questioning which one utilizes the XRP ledger right off the bat?
No, I'm considering the cryptography and because you have like a pre-shared key with Atomic, and with Universal you kind of just send the payment on to the next hop and then let them send it on. So you have most of the financial uh, you know institutions are going for Atomic. So with Atomic, essentially, um, you and I, okay, so like you and I, Death, share a key, and then oh, I'm gonna screw this up. You and I share a key, and because we've shared the key, then you can sign. Anyway, what happens is a loop on the Atomic version of a transaction. So until I get back you signing a transaction, like say like a, I'm gonna screw this up. I can see it in my head, but I don't know how to say it. Until you sign, you have to have the key, and then that comes back to me, and then the money moves, right? Or at least, no, maybe it's I get a receipt from you having received the payment versus the universal mode where I'm going to send you some money, but I just send it, right? This is how the internet works. Like you just send the data packet, and it, if it gets to the end destination, fine. If it doesn't, you just send it again. Okay, but that doesn't exactly work so well with money, right? Because if I'm sending you money and it just disappears, which happens in correspondent banking. Correspondent banking is essentially universal mode. So that's the way the world is today. And then the companies, the liquidity providers, the correspondent bankers, essentially just eat the cost when things go bad. Like if the money never shows up, they just eat it. Atomic mode, you have a loop back where it confirms that the payment was received. So the payment doesn't matter how many hops it went through. The payment went because the receiver and the sender have a pre-shared key. And so using that pre-shared key, the receiver can confirm with the sender that, hey, like I got the $10. The process of pre-sharing the key, okay, there can be some issues there if you want to, depending on how sort of cybersecurity you want to be paranoid about. But if we can pre-share a key, which costs nothing, then we can conduct an atomic transaction, and both of us can know that the transaction has completed. Period. Like you gotta loop back. With universal mode, you just send it. It's like a forward moving only thing. There's no loop back. So there's no like like at the end of the day you double check to see if this and that happened. There's none of that with universal. With universal, you send the thing out, the payment, and off it goes. and hopefully it gets to its destination. And if it doesn't, then they'll ask for it again, and then you send it again. If that makes any sense. Versus atomic, you have this. I hate to call it like a. I mean, it's a pre-shared key. It's like it's a pre-arrangement. So the two parties have there's been no money moved, but the two parties have, from a cryptographic perspective, shared a key. I think they replaced SPSP, but that's what that used to be the methods, but I'm pretty sure they replaced that. And I forget what SPSP even stands for, but that used to be the method. Now there's a new method.
Yeah, I think that's very important what you said, Karma, about atomics. Then some of the concepts in CBDCs, they using atomic swaps, and some of them universal bridge. And that's the important thing, is then no money is actually moved over the ledger. So there is also that I take that as a disadvantage to the bridge version.
Well, there's a big difference between atomic and universal. And if you're running, say, let's say you're a liquidity provider, market maker, whatever the hell you want to call it, interledger protocol connector, you've got accounts on multiple ledgers. There's a big difference between okay, so this is like between universal and atomic. There's a big difference between, in this I would think would matter. I pretty much, I think the CBDCs, they'll go with atomic because of what I'm about to say. But there's a big difference between me sending you some money and hoping that you pass it on to the next guy, who passes it on to the next guy, who sends it to death, right? Like he finally, the recipient, gets the money, but I don't have any confirm, right? Versus atomic settlement, me and death have a key that we share together, cryptographic, and you know the money is sort of pre-arranged, but like I'm not sure if I'm 100% correct here, but in essence I am. If death doesn't send me a signed transaction that says, hey, I've been offered this money to receive this money, then I don't send it. So one of them is universal. You send the money out and hopefully it gets there. With atomic, you don't send the money until you get a confirm from the recipient. If that makes any sense. I hope that made sense. Gosh, it's been a while since I looked at this stuff or even thought about it. Yeah. You either have a loop back and a confirm, or you just send the payment and hope it gets there. That's the difference between the two modes. The internet works on the universal method. servers will just send out data packets and hope they get there, and if they don't get there, they'll resend it. Whatever, no big deal. When it's money, I think it's a different situation. You know, people are going to be a little more sensitive about that. And to get back to what I was hoping to talk about today, the routing function, the routing portion of, or routing functionality. You know, how you determine these rates, the FX rates, like this is a major opportunity. Like major trillions. Because how, if you are the person who is providing the liquidity, then you get to essentially determine the spread on the FX rates. And so if you're the one, then you get to that's how you make money, is from the spread. And as long as you have the inventory of the couple of currencies, you know, A and B, then you get the this is where the fun comes in, is like determining how to price or outcompete the big banks. The AMMs are going to do this. To come back to the to come back.
Yeah, go get a glass of water. Don't choke. Don't die on us. All right.
No, my throat's dry. But to get back to the AMMs, like this is a crowdsourced pricing mechanism. That's not something that the market has really, well, outside of the peer-to-peer lending, which the institutional guys took over. But outside of that, the market's never seen a crowdsourced pricing mechanism for liquidity. And the thing with crypto is it's global, right? So the US can try and like flex some muscle, but that's fine. There's European exchanges, there's Asian exchanges, there's African exchanges, there's South American exchanges. Like all this, you know, the US can't like flex like that, like the US banks. They're not going to be able to do that. I mean, they're going to have to compete. And if consumers are willing to provide liquidity cheaper than institutional liquidity, then institutional is going to lose out, and consumers will go with the, you know, yeah, I'd rather pay 4% than 5%, right? I mean, you don't have to be that smart. Like, yeah, not that complicated. If the crowdsourced liquidity is 4%, then I'm taking that. It's the same damn money. We're not talking NFTs here, right? Currency is fungible. $1 is the same as another dollar. I don't care which one it is. Just give it to me. And the cheaper you give it to me, the better. So
Yeah, we're coming on that end. We got about 20 minutes left. If anybody in the audience has any comments, I know we have a couple new faces in here. If anybody has anything that they'd like to bring up on the subject or any questions, please feel free to come up now. And if not, I think Karma, a good way to lead out on it is we've talked about payment channels, the liquidity providing, right? Why it's inefficient today. how it can be more efficient. And I think it would be good to maybe start talking about how it's being used right now, today, and then where maybe we see that in the next couple months to a year or two with what's going on with the Interledger protocol.
Well, I'm maybe we should do another focus chat on this topic after the conference. I'm excited to meet up personally with several people. It's not there yet. The problem is, you know, with like Bitcoin and Ether, you have this mining thing, and so all these people want to participate in the network. With Interledger Protocol, there's no token. There's like no token. You have to actually perform work like connecting various ledgers in order to earn money. So that's a little more difficult. So it's there's only a couple of groups or companies and people, some of which have joined these chats, who are really genuinely working on this. So it's still very small. It reminds me of like XRP Ledger, like circa 2015. It's still a very young network. I think it's going to be the winning network because there's nothing else out there that's better, and it's already integrated with all the major browsers. You know, that's not an easy accomplishment. That's hard to do. So yeah, it's still very early, like extremely early. Even though it's been several years, it's still very early. There's really only like, and by say a handful, I mean I could count them with less than the fingers on my hand, on a single hand. Like, there's just not that many people out there that are really working with this technology. And I mean, to me, that's exciting. I like to be early. Means it takes longer, but nonetheless, you can have more of an impact if you're early. I mean, I only know of 3 or 4 folks that are really, and by folks, I mean organizations. It's surprising, actually, how long it's taken for adoption to begin, but it's begun. I mean, in this connector role, this market maker, liquidity provider role, this how do you price the FX across multiple ledgers, multiple currencies? You know, it's a complicated problem. Some of these ledgers move slow. Some of these ledgers move fast. That's going to be a problem, like that you'd have to calculate into your routing table. You know, oh, you presumably, unless you actually have the capital to front, you're going to be borrowing some capital, so you've got interest rate cost. That makes the time aspect even more sensitive, because you know interest is cost of time. I should shut up and let some people ask questions before we close the chat.
Yeah, I mean, we got Focus and Alex. You guys are the only ones up here. If you guys have any questions, I'll send a couple invites out, see if we can get some people up here, because I know we only got like 10, 15 minutes out before we close up. But if anybody has any questions about anything that's been spoken about, or have your own questions in regard to like liquidity routing, connectors, interledger protocol, liquidity providing, please feel free to come up.
Yeah, I'll second that. I'd rather have some folks ask questions and not have me just.
Yeah, I joined this chat quite late, so I rather to listen from the beginning, just in case I want to ask the question it's been already answered. So
My biggest takeaway isn't necessarily the functionality. It's like helpful to know the like how things move, and especially that universal versus atomic was explanation was pretty helpful. Essentially, the most important thing that I want to know, which you've answered and has been answered, is that the for someone that holds an asset, they will now, once the XLS30 implementation happens, essentially you're sourcing liquidity, you're earning passive income by providing liquidity to the network. That's how I'm understanding it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's how an AMM would work.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, and that is a huge
Yeah,
huge use case for us.
You're essentially behaving the same way as a JP Morgan or a Citibank or a Goldman Sachs or a Barclays. You're behaving as a liquidity provider, and you're providing capital to the market, and you should be paid for that. That's very reasonable. I mean, if you're providing capital, you should be paid. We live in a capitalist society. That's how it works.
Well, and this is the cool thing, at least to me, is back in the speculation days. Well, I guess we're still in the speculation days. We're always in there, but there's a few people used to tell me, they're like, in the end, you won't have to sell your XRP. Well, this is a use case for that very argument. You know what I mean? And if you can earn passive income and you can just continually provide liquidity to the market, that's a great thing.
Yeah, and it adds right into, and Wolf, I'll let you go right after me. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand was up. But it adds right into our topic of the day, which is the connectors and the routing liquidity, right? Because an AMM is great, but if you have this siloed off network, right, the liquidity is only passed through that network. And so, if you have these different abilities to route this liquidity using different payment connectors and federated side chains, you have this much more efficient liquidity beast of a system, right? And so, yeah, Wolf, you go ahead, man. And yeah, this has been a great chat so far.
Yeah, thanks, Carmen, for having me up, and a lot of good information today, Carmen. I was just wondering, will there be a lot of different connectors around, or do you think that the state connector that Flare is working on could be directly connected to all of this, or what's your take on that?
I think they will come. I have an NDA, so I can't say. But, I don't want to say too much, but I promise you, some of the big investment banks and stuff, this is their job. Like, they're money center banks. So yeah, there's gonna be, I would imagine, all of them who will ultimately function as interledger protocol connectors. I mean, this is their business. This is what they do. So, and these aren't, yes, there's not many currently. And when I say not many, I mean literally less than like 5 that I'm aware of who are really, really doing this the right way. There might be some people playing around with it and whatnot, but yes, all the money center banks are, in my opinion, and watch me be wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. They're all going to end up interledger protocol connectors, and they're going to be routing the liquidity, which is exactly what they do today. That's what they do. That's their job. So either they're going to quit and like get out of the business and close down the industry or exit the industry, or they're going to step up to bat and start performing the function with this new technology. Those are the options. Step up to bat or get off the field. Those are the options. And I'm sorry, but get off the field isn't an option. Like, you can't do that. Not if you're an executive at one of these companies. You pull that move, not only are you fired, but you're never going to get another job again. You can't do that. I mean, this is what they do. They provide liquidity. So this is the new way of providing liquidity, and there you go. But they know this stuff, dude. It's not like these people are stupid. They know how to do the routing tables and the pricing of liquidity and all this stuff. Like, dude, this is what they do for hundreds of years. Nothing's changed. I mean, well, the form factor has changed. It's digital. Okay, fine. But the essence of what's being done, the essence of the job that's being performed is the same. It's just the only difference is the AMMs, because that's a crowdsourced pricing of liquidity. That is different. And I'm a big proponent of that, for the record. I think it's a really good idea to have a crowdsourced pricing mechanism for providing liquidity. I have also a lot of thought on this crowdsourced aspect regarding real estate, but that's a more complicated subject. But I'm a proponent of crowdsourced stuff, and I think that to I'm going to say push back, but I don't think it's necessarily a competitive thing. But to have as a counterweight towards institutional liquidity, because they price their liquidity in a more sophisticated way, I guess. I think it's good, and if the institutional folks can't keep up with, aka make their rates lower, right? Because what happens is the crowd actually is willing to accept a lower interest rate. So if the institutional folks have to compete with, let's say you're institutional and I'm crowd, if you're charging 5% and I'm charging 4%, the crowd, like, it puts like a governor on like a in terms of like a car, like how it won't let the car go too fast, kind of governor. It puts like a governor on the institutional players' ability to raise interest rates and get more money, because you've got the crowd there offering 4%. This is a good thing. I think this adds some balance to the market, and I'm generally almost always in I'm almost always a proponent of bringing balance. Bring some yin and yang. Bring both. Right? Give me some balance. And we've not had that, like, in at least not in my lifetime. It's always been yin, no yang. Like, just the institutional guys calling the shots, and these AMMs, I think, are extremely important. This is, I mean, all of crypto, I mean, it all falls under the same umbrella. All of crypto, the AMMs, all this stuff, it provides a yin to the yang, or whatever the hell. I know yin and yang have different terms. Or meanings. I don't know what the hell they are, but it's a balance thing. And I think if we can bring the common man into the liquidity provisioning business through some of these crypto holdings, then it can help put some of the institutional players in check. To use a chess term, I was talking about chess with someone earlier. So, yeah, put them in check. You can't raise the rates that high, because people can get liquidity over here from a crowdsourced methodology for cheaper. So, yeah, good luck raising those rates. You ain't going to do that successfully. I mean, there might be some rubes out there, but no.
But also, Karma, doesn't that also raise the question on how, like, obviously the Fed, central banks, returns on bond policies, if you start changing, the FX rates and what you're charging to be able to move that cash, especially when you start talking about the financial institutions attached to the Fed and centrals, that will have to be reevaluated on their end to be able to actually compete with the new rates that the crowdfunding is going to be able to do. Am I right? Or
yeah, no, you're on point. There's two sort of phrases. Well, I would say the ability for the market to circumvent. Okay, so the Fed, like the central bank of whatever economy, raising the rates, that's going to significantly impact the money center banks, right? Because their collateral is ultimately reserves. So if you raise the cost of their cost, then they got to raise the price of their price. Versus individual consumers don't care. They either have the capital available and their relative cost is zero, right? Like, how much do I make on like, say, my crypto per month? Well, nothing, right? It doesn't pay interest. So I'm perfectly happy with 1%. Like, 1% is 100% more than zero. Okay. So I have a lower cost of capital. This is Ripple's secret weapon that most people don't realize. Actually, this is actually a good point to close out on, because I know we're getting close to the end here. Ripple's cost of capital, it's seigniorage, it's zero. And so they can allow or enable or fund liquidity for the big money center banks. Their cost of capital is more than zero. So their competitive stance is not as strong as they're used to. If that makes any sense, I hope. And so this puts them in an uncomfortable situation. Like, if the crowd can source, if you can, anyway, I don't want to just repeat myself, but it comes down to the cost side of the situation. If the cost of capital is lower for the crowd, okay, like the people in this chat, if the cost of capital is lower than the institutional banks' cost of capital, then the crowd can undercut the institutions. That's not a market dynamic that's ever existed that I'm aware of. This is a different. This brings in a whole different ball game. And I mean, and I know we're off of the routing tables and the FX and all this stuff, but yeah, from a market dynamics point of view, I think this AMM thing is massively important.
Yeah, we're right at that 6 o'clock mark, so it's a perfect end note right there. We'll close up the space. We have our space tomorrow, guys, 3:30 Eastern Standard Time, just like we do every Thursday. And I just would like to end off on the note, if you guys would like to do a little bit more research into the Interledger protocol, right? And one of the connectors that we particularly talked about today, it was gifted and was created and gifted to the W3C in 2015 by Ripple, right? And has been adopted by the W3C, which is the World Wide Web Consortium that governs the protocols of the internet today in an international standard. And one of the main projects being built to enable open source connectors to connect right on and build into the Interledger protocol is Rafiki, and there's another one that I can't think off the top of my head, so I am sorry about that.
Mojo Loop.
Mojo Loop, but I think Mojo Loop is going to utilize Rafiki, if I'm not mistaken. Rafiki, yeah, right, yeah, but there's
Mojo Loop's a copy paste / edit of Interledger protocol. That's the Gates Foundation.
Yeah, I would consider them more like, exactly how I said, like it's funny, the Gates Foundation, but more of like the gateway to the Interledger protocol, in the sense of like they'd KYC you, they'd be the financial representative that you would use to use the technology. But Rafiki being the open source code that's trying to enable people to easily tap into the ability for everyone to have a payment route.
Like if you wanted to be a connector, if you wanted to perform this liquidity provisioning business, then you would start by downloading Rafiki.
Exactly. And so, on that note, if you guys would like to dig into those things a little bit more, great things to look into. We will definitely bring this subject up again. Karma will be at the Interledger Protocol conference in a couple weeks, or 2 weeks, I think. And
it's like a week, dude, and I still got to buy my tickets and book the hotel. I got a ration of shit earlier for not having it done.
Yeah, we'll definitely get that done, and we'll talk back on this subject a little bit later, and I'll probably try to have a one or two guests in here who particularly liked that are building on the Interledger protocol themselves. But of course, everybody, nothing that was said tonight is financial advice. The panelists' views do not necessarily represent those of ledgerscale. We host these spaces Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, 30 Eastern Standard Time. On Wednesday, we have our focus topic space from 5 to 6. We do have some links up at the top if anybody would like to click, and we have some donation links, I should say, of crypto addresses. Really helps out our efforts and the future growth that we'll be able to propel ourselves with, being able to run hardware on multiple networks. And if you want to finish up, Karma, I know R6U just came up, man. If you have a question after Karma, and then I think we'll close it.
Yeah, Karma, I was just going to say, don't feel bad. I haven't done anything either to go.
Well, I'll say once we get, and I haven't checked, I probably should. Maybe we have it already. I doubt it though. But once we have enough money to get the lawyers and the accountants and all the books and legal stuff set right, then we can get ledgerscale legitimized. And so, I mean, I don't want to pay for it myself, but yeah, if you want to contribute, those crypto wallets are there, and obviously it's all on public ledgers, so you can see everything. And yeah, I think it's been a good conversation. This topic, we didn't really get into some other aspects of it in terms of how do you calculate, a routing table, but that maybe that's a little too much. Liquidity curves and this kind of thing. All the liquidity curves have been abandoned, but you still have to do that calculation. So maybe I shouldn't bring that up. I was hoping to go there at some point in this conversation, but oh well.
It's all good. Don't worry. We went a little over, but I hope everybody has a good rest of the night. I'll be on later, so maybe seems to some familiar faces. Either way, I hope everybody has a good rest of the night, of course, and I see everybody tomorrow.
Have a good night, everyone.